Hey knitters, this is Jana with Purl Together, and I'm coming to you again this week with another little mini ornament. If you follow my Instagram or you're in the Ravelry group, you saw this first little tiny sweater that I made, and it's probably a couple inches high. I mean, you can see how it is. I have big hands, but still, you can see it's not terribly large. It's not big, but the one that I made today for this video is tiny. Look how tiny. It's so cute. It's about 1.5 inches high, and this is just leftover sock yarn. It's darling. So I'm going to show you how I made that. The pattern for it is down below in the video description. And first, before I begin though, I want to give a hearty shout out to my newest patron. Thanks so much for your support, Theresa Young. If you'd like to become a patron and support the videos coming to you each and every week on this channel, go to patreon.com/Purl Together, and you can see what kinds of rewards I'm offering for a small monthly pledge. All right, go check it out. Let's get started. Okay, I've cast on 18 stitches, 9 on each half of my magic loop. And the reason I have these markers here is because, as the instructions indicate, if you're going to be using circular needles, then you'll want to, rather than DPNs, then you would want to mark 4 stitches, then 5, then 4 stitches, then 5. Because if I was using DPNs, these 4 stitches would be on the first DPN, then I would have the juncture of the needles, and then we'd have 5 and the juncture of the needles, then we'd have 4, the juncture of my DPNs, and then the remaining 5. So these are just going to help me be markers to know where the increases for the tiny sleeves will occur. All right, so I just wanted to explain why I'm doing magic loop, because I prefer that over DPNs. You do what works best for you, and so I'm just going to knit around. And that is round 1. Okay, round 2, we're going to begin the sleeve increases. Now, basically, this is just a tiny top-down raglan sweater. So we're pretending that the markers are where the double-pointed juncture would be if I were using double points. So we're going to knit for it and then knit through the front, and then swing your needle around and knit through the back. So KFB is knit through the front and knit through the back. My stitch marker, if you're wondering why it's so bendy, it's one of those, like when your kid has braces and it's just one of those dental rubber bands you can get. They're really flexible, so they're kind of nice for that. I think you can just buy them by the 100 on Amazon. But they're small and they don't really interfere with the stitch the stitch spacing is, I guess, what I'm trying to say. Okay, knit through the front and back, and then knit 3, and you're going to knit through the front and back of the last stitch on this needle as well. And then repeat that for the opposite side of our work. Okay, so since I'm magic looping, I'm just going to work that around, and I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. And then knit row 3 is just a knit. Okay, beginning with row 4, the only thing I want to point out is that the instructions say knit front and back and then knit to the last stitch on the DPN, which means I'm going to knit front and back in this first stitch, and the last stitch on the DPN would be just before this marker because I'm using magic loop again instead of double points, but this would be where the end of the needles would be. So if you're following along with me and you're using those markers, just keep that in mind. Just follow your instructions for rounds 4, 5, and 6. It's really pretty straightforward. And then I'll show you how we're going to put the sections on scrap yarn. All right, I finished row 5 and 6, and all I've done here is taken the first section of stitches, and I just used a little bit of gray sock yarn and a smaller tapestry needle, and I just threaded that scrap yarn through those first section of stitches. So that was the first 6 or 7 stitches that up to that red marker that I had here. And now I'm just going to knit around, making sure that I'm cinching that up pretty well, because what's going to happen, that becomes your sleeve. So I want to close the gap here, between here and here, pretty securely, so I don't end up with a big hole underneath the underarm, what will be the underarm of the sweater. So you can visualize that. This is the top collar, that's going to be a sleeve, that'll be a sleeve, and then this is the front of the tiny sweater. Okay, so all I'm doing here is continuing knitting across the second section on this front needle. And like I said, I'm going to give that a good little tug because I want to snug that up. And then I'm going to hold that fairly securely while I snug up the second and third stitch as well. Then I'm going to do the same thing on the back half of the sweater. So again, if you're using DPNs, this would be all of these stitches here from the green marker to the right would be on a double pointed needle on its own. So again, I just have my little scrap yarn here with my little tapestry needle, and I'm just going to go in as if to purl and slip those first ones off, drawing the scrap yarn through there. Okay. All right, pretty simple. I like to kind of even that up. All right, I'm going to remove this marker since I don't need it at the moment. Bring my magic loop around and finish my round the same way as I did before, where I'm just going to make sure this is pretty secure. On the second one, give that a good little tug as well and finish your row. I'm just going to knit this in the round, for another 10 rows, keeping track, or to the length that you want your sweater to be. Then we'll do a tiny little rib section and bind off in pattern. So I'll show you what that looks like after I'm finished knitting the little body of the tiny sweater. The other thing I was going to point out here is that since I have 11 stitches across the front and back, and my beginning of the round is here, one thing you could do is, turn this over and visualize it like a little baby sweater. You could go look for a little Fair Isle pattern if you wanted to. Knowing I have 11 stitches here, you could knit a little, a couple of, like a pyramid in the shape of a Christmas tree. Anyway, you could search that out and add some color work here if you wanted to, or just like a little mini star. If you don't want to embroider the front of your sweater later on, you could plan to incorporate that in as you're knitting the body of the sweater if you wanted to. I'm just going to knit this one plain because I like how it looks plain. But you could also do some stripes. You be creative with your baby sweater and see where the festive holiday creativity takes you. Okay, as you can see, I finished rows 8 through 17, and then one thing that I decided to alter was I did a couple more rows of the knit one, purl one ribbing at the bottom, and then I bound off in pattern. And I did that because what I found when I did this pattern before, if you only do one row of the ribbing part, then it still does tend to curl. So I added a couple of rows just because I didn't want the curling. Then I knitted this sleeve, and I'm going to show you next how I'm going to do the other sleeve. I'll show you exactly what I did. So when I went to pick up the stitches, I started the underarm. Let me get my magic loop needle here. I start at the underarm and I kind of just lift up. I kind of just really gently lift up my waist yarn to cause that stitch that I'm going to grab to open up. And then that's the way that I go in and pick that up right there. And I do a couple at a time. And the reason I brought an extra little double point needle here is because you need to pull out that waist yarn at the same time. So I go underneath and get a hold of that horizontal portion of that. Sorry about that, I was off camera. And then I pull out the end of that as I go. Every couple of stitches, I'll go ahead and pull that. Hopefully I'm pulling the right end. Yeah, I pull that out as I go. And then again, I just kind of lift up on that just a little bit and get my working needle underneath there. And do that again. Okay, so I've got 4 stitches on this needle and I have 3 or 4 left. So if I'm magic looping, this will be my halfway mark. If you're using double points, then just evenly distribute those sleeve stitches around and go ahead and carry on picking up these other 3 or 4 that I have here. Now the instructions say that you're only going to pick up 1 underarm stitch. I'm going to pick up probably 2. You just want to pick up however many you think you need to so that you're avoiding any holes in the underarm. Okay, now I'm going to pull out my waist yarn there. You can use your other double pointed needle to help you too. So I have only a total of 7 stitches here, so I'm definitely going to want to pick up at least 1 to make things even. But there's quite a gap here, so I'll probably pick up 2 or 3. But, arrange things how you like. The stitch count doesn't matter so much. Obviously, you want it to be as symmetrical as you can with the other side. However many stitches you had going around on this side, you'll want it to be the same over here. All right, I picked up 1 on the other side as well and 2 on this side. So I have 5 on each needle, and then I'm going to just add my yarn back in and begin knitting. I'm going to count the same number of rows I did on this side, or measure. If, obviously you want your sleeves to be the same length on both sides. So I'm just going to add this back in and begin knitting in the round until I have the same number of rows on both sides. After I picked up the stitches, I've knitted around just one time, and you'll notice where I began, this is the tail end, and it's really very loose. So since this is, you know, not a sweater that's going to be worn unless the elves commandeer it, I'm going to just tie a little square knot right here and tighten that up, and then I'm going to take the tail in and just tuck it down inside the sweater ornament. But then that won't be loose, and I can secure that inside just fine. So probably what I'm going to do now is just take a darning needle and, you know, you can thread that back down inside the body of the sweater if it bothers you. I'm just going to hold it to the middle for now and continue knitting round and round. Okay, I think I've knitted enough rows here. Now I'm just going to do one row of knit one, purl one, and then bind off in pattern. And then after I weave in my ends, I should be done with my tiny sweater. It's so cute. All right, I've completed my bind off and I tucked all the ends down inside. All I did for my little hanger was, this was my original tail from the cast on, and I just brought it around to the other side of the collar and tied it off. But there's lots of examples of people using little, you know, soft gauge wire and, you know, making a little hanger for it, florist wire, possibly, whatever you think works for you. But you can see how tiny this is. For me, the distance between my thumb joint and the end of my thumb is a little over an inch, so that's tiny, and it's so cute. It makes me want to make about 6 more. So these would be really fun for, you know, just to include as a topper on a gift maybe, or like I've said before, include it in your holiday baking good care packages. So super cute. All right, I hope you enjoyed the video of the tiny sweater. It's really fun, and it only takes, you know, maybe an hour and a half. It was really quick to knit. Now I want to make a whole bunch more. They're so cute. So show me yours tiny sweater. In the Ravelry group, we have a knit along thread going, and also a separate thread for finished objects. So if you've made a tiny sweater or any other tiny ornament, post your finished object photo over there for a chance to win some little prizes that I've been doing each week until Christmas. All right, I look forward to seeing your finished objects in the Ravelry group. Join our Facebook group if you like, and check out Purl Together on Patreon. Thanks for watching.